Well, with that, let's just jump in. I think we're a minute or two past the hour, and as people join, they can catch up quickly. I hope. I hate to make everyone wait for others. So, welcome all. I'm Jason Anderson. I thought I'd share my video up front. I don't know how it looks in Zoom once I start presenting from my screen as well. So I just wanted to say hello face to face. I'm excited to share this chat. We've got a weird group of folks together for this discussion. I'm just looking through the attendee list, and we have some of our current customers and some folks that have had several discussions with us in our sales team, and others that are brand new. So welcome all. Great to meet you, and look forward to chatting again as time permits. Today's topic is going to be a fun one, I hope. It's chatting specifically about this new world we live in these large language models and AI, and how AI is sort of evolving how we could go to work as proposal professionals. And I want to show, talk about that. I want to show how we coexist, how our software works, how AI works, how they work together, and give some, hopefully, some practical applications of what you can do with AI today. So as I mentioned, I'm Jason. I am the head of sales and marketing here at Expedience. I've been here for about, 7-8 years now. And I come to Expedience from having bought our software. So I have a weird, I don't know if it's that weird, but I have that perspective of both having been a customer that knew I needed to have a more efficient way of making proposals, and all of the experience that it took to deploy our software and then get value from it. And I bring that kind of experience, if you will, both to the use of our software as well. When I'm talking to customers like this one, I'll show you how I use Expedience, how I use Copilot, how our sales team here do all of these things. I'm a longtime proposal writer, a proposal consultant, a champion of proposals, and a technology advocate as well. So that's just a tiny bit about me. Before I dive in, maybe it's helpful if I give a quick overview for the Zoom part of this. You'll see a Q&A panel at the bottom of your controls or what have you. Feel free to chat questions as they come up. I've got a colleague of mine on the Zoom right now, and he'll do his best to respond to questions real time. And those that are hopefully more topical, what have you, I'll just take a few minutes at the end to raise to everyone and share with everyone answers to questions. My contact details are there beneath that photo of myself. Feel free to reach out to me whenever, if you want to chat further, if we don't get to your questions, or if you'd like to have a better or different understanding, please just let me know. So what will we talk about today? Just talking about AI as a general, the idea of using AI in proposals. What does that mean from a security perspective? What does that mean from a individual accountability perspective, or the agency of the product of AI? What does that mean? I want to talk a lot about expedience and or I'll just call it proposal automation, or generically content libraries versus AI. Kind of, I'll describe where I see them being similar and how I see them being very synergistic with each other, but also some real differences. Talk about prompting. I'll share some ideas about prompts and prompt example, and I'll show you a tool of ours, our prompt library tool. It's going to be helpful for me to show you AI to use the prompt library tool anyway. So it's sort of a self-serving component for this presentation as well, that I can show you sort of that tool in use. So for those of you who are newer to Expedience, a one-slide introduction. We've been automating proposals since 2014 was the first version of our software. The company was founded prior to that, but our vision was different then and remains different today. It's to bring proposal automation and proposal efficiency into the apps that customers use to make proposals already. It's kind of a different stance. Most of the tools in the market would say, get rid of Word, or get rid of whatever what you're using today. Go online, make a proposal here, and then, if you want, we can push it back to Word. And some people might say in a kind of a weird, disconnected way. Others, it works fine for them. I don't mean to be dismissive of that approach. It's just different than ours. Our approach is saying, what if we brought those tools directly into the applications that customers frequently use to make proposals before looking to automation? I'll tell you that as Word has evolved, this strategy of bringing our software into Word has really paid some awesome dividends, both for us and Expedience and what our tools can do, but also for our customers. I just made a slide to kind of talk through that. quickly that, back when 2012, when the company was founded, since then, Word has in 2017 released co-authoring, right? Where two people could be in the same document at the same time. That was a breakthrough for our customers as that was a real challenge to collaborate in a document in real time. And then they brought in notifications where you could do the at mention and people could get real time notified in 2018. 2019, they kind of took on that Grammarly kind of application where the software Word became more of a writing assistant. And back in 23, just a few years ago now, they released the first remnant of the first components, if you will, of Microsoft Copilot and Gen AI. And that's what we'll talk about today. But it is fun for me to look back on kind of these advances that just 10 years ago, how different Word was and what it brought kind of as native functionality. Copilot today is a really trying to be neutral in words. I want to call it a really awesome. It is a really awesome tool. A Copilot is an AI aggregator that lives directly inside of the Office suite. When I made up that phrase, I don't think I've read it being called an AI aggregator, but it does indeed aggregate several different AI tools within it. So within Copilot, there are the development arms. There's the DALL-E image creation. There's app orchestration of the apps themselves and pulling from the Microsoft Graph. It has full Chat GPT 5 and all of the OpenAI capabilities as well. And this is rapidly expanding. So Copilot's becoming a really awesome hub for AI productivity directly within Microsoft Office suite. And that being directly within Office gives you two things. First, it gives you, accessibility. It's where you're already at, but it also gives you security. And I'll talk more about that in a bit, that Copilot fits within the existing security landscape that your organization has in place today around all of the Office suites. So there's no incremental exposure in using Copilot. So it's become a very, again, awesome portal for all of the advances of AI. So that's, I guess I had that next. I knew it was coming up soon, but so is it safe? That's the first question that a lot of customers, when they think about the idea of incorporating AI into their proposals in any way, I'd like to share with them that Copilot is quite safe. It's built in the enterprise data protection suite. It respects all permissions. So Copilot, if I'm running Copilot and I only have permissions to access certain data, then Copilot, as I'm using it, doesn't have greater permissions than I have. Right, so it only can see what the user can see. It's got compliance coverage incorporated with all of those awesome acronyms of SOC and HIPAA and all of the compliance acronyms. It does enforce your existing Microsoft 365 security stack, as I mentioned. So it fits into those security protocols that are in place today. And it's quite a lot safer than most other third-party tools, as there's no retention of your data. Your data is not used for training. So a lot of the things that we would have heard about in the news, or maybe we still hear about today, where individuals at corporations are going on to ChatGPT and they're sharing something very specific, either about their customer or their company or other sensitive information to ChatGPT. And that information has then leaked out where ChatGPT learned it and taught someone else with that. That is not, that opportunity for exposure does not exist within Copilot. Copilot's a secure platform. It's behind your firewall. Your content's not used to train the AI beast, if you will. So this other slide, though, it's important. Maybe I didn't make this mention very well. I talked about look how Word's gone awesome directions with technology and what have you, and how that's been beneficial to expedience. What I haven't mentioned was that the kind of the competitive approaches on the market for proposal automation, many of them are incorporating their own AI tools within their platform, and that's radically different than our approach. And we think this makes a lot of sense. Why? Well, because Microsoft has way more dollars than Expedience or any of way bigger than we are, right? And they have obviously more resources to bring much more agency and applicability and the functionality of these AI tools. We strongly believe that not only is it by far safer to use Copilot than some of the proprietary tools, the opportunity for it to be, again, advanced and quite capable is really profound. So here's a common myth when customers come to me and say, "Hey, I want to talk about AI. AI can't just write my proposal. I got an RFP. Can't I just have AI look at some old proposals and make for me the best, winningest proposal that it's ever seen? Can't it just do it for me out of the box?" And the short answer is, well, it actually could. But the longer answer is no, it cannot. Why can't it? Because your data is a big problem and it can't be trusted. That stuff that it would use to ground and to create the ground the response and to maybe I should define that term. Grounding is when you do an AI call and it pulls in other sources of information to base an answer on. That's called grounding. That grounding from old proposals is valuable and helpful, but wait a second, our content has problems, right? Just like it does today. If you're today going out to a SharePoint folder and opening up old proposals and looking around for things and copying and pasting it in, Copilot can do that for you. But just like that's a problem today for you manually, while it was done much more quickly, it's still opportunity for outdated, inaccurate 9 versions of our sets of assumptions that have evolved over this period of time with inaccurate and conflicting and problematic information that it found as the answer within those old proposals. Oh, by the way, AI itself is a problem as well in this mix, because if you've played with any of the tools, but I'll just kind of focus more on Copilot. But if you played with any of the AI tools and you've asked a question and it'll give you an answer, and sometimes it'll say, "Look, here are my sources. I took this piece of information. I took that piece of information to provide for you this answer, or to provide for you this what we might call in a proposal this record or this chunk of content or whatever it might be." And then as we read it, knowing our product or knowing our service or knowing what we do or don't say or how we do or don't say them, we say, "Oh, wow, it combined these 2 accurate things to create something that's inaccurate or maybe misleading or maybe incomplete or maybe in other ways problematic." The other thing it has a tendency to do is it fills in gaps where the 2 things it sourced kind of had something between them that was missing, and Copilot or any of the AI tools have a tendency to just fill in those gaps in a way that it now is logical and complete and whatever it thinks as best it can accurate. But in that filling in gaps, it makes stuff up. They call that a hallucination. I'm sure everyone's heard that phrase by now. A year or so ago, it was kind of a new concept, but today we've all likely seen and heard that phrase. It hallucinates and it'll invent things. And as a proofreader, as someone who's looking at the content after it's been created, it becomes very problematic for us, right? To find those fill-ins, those gap fills that are there. So the long and the short of it is that why it can't do this back here, just, "Hey, here's the RFP, look at some old stuff, make the proposal," is that it can't be trusted. It needs proofing, it needs fixed. You need to read every word that comes out of any of the AI tools, and Copilot is included. This is important, this idea of agency and the fact that when we sign off on that proposal and we send that proposal forward, whether that be sending it around our organization or certainly sending it to the customer, we own it all, right? So they hired me to paint this house and I'm working with some faulty construction here. It don't matter. If I was the one that was hired to come in and be the solution provider, if I'm the proposal expert, if I'm the one who's advancing this proposal, I get to own all of those challenges, those shortcomings. So the idea of trustworthiness and to know what I can count on and what I need to prove, they both have their place. And I'll talk about that here. I don't by any means mean to throw stones at the use of AI. I think I'll share with you a handful of really great uses of AI, but just want to make sure that I get this concept through, that there's some agency importance. So where does expedience come in? Where does proposal automation come in? What's the difference? And I obviously didn't automate my little end result bullets at the bottom of this, but that is the bottom line, is it's around building a trusted source of content that we can bring some efficiencies to document creation and proposal creation, where we don't require all of the same kind of level of proofing each time. So how that's done is by taking old proposals and then curating them, selecting content that's the best versions of this, the latest and the accurate versions of that, and then sanitizing them, fixing them, removing anything that was something that was too customer specific or too or naming that of the customer that this was written for, or anything else that was too unique, making things more anonymous and more generalized so that it's now a more reusable kind of Lego block like asset for that next proposal. Those Lego blocks, those assets are built into the content library of expedience. And I'll show you these things here in just a second. I'll go make expedience go and I'll make Copilot go so you get a real sense of this. But I'm just trying to illustrate the idea that there's real value in old proposals. There's great content we've written before. There's great answers to questions and descriptions and overviews and methodologies and what have you that are essential for our future proposals. But just in and of themselves, in their raw form, they need to be tested and vetted and approved and as I mentioned, curated. And that's exactly what happens when you look towards proposal automation. So where I said I'm not going to be just all stone thrower towards Copilot. Where does it fit well? Well, not everything can live in your content library. So there will be that necessity of going out to old content, old proposals, looking around for where did we write that before, and then scrubbing it and fixing it and bringing it into the proposal. And then as an end result of that process, putting that nugget of gold into the content library for future use. Here we are reusing something that didn't make the initial cut to find its way into the content library. But now as it's resurfacing the need for this again, I've gone through that process of generating something new, either using Copilot or we wrote something by hand or combination, where Copilot might have wrote part of it or a subject expert wrote part of it and Copilot rewrote it, what have you. It's a great use of Copilot is finding stuff. Hey, where is this? And then reimagining that content. So whether that be I think 4 or 5 bullets down, I say unify voices of multiple contributors. That idea, or taking a piece of content that was written for one target audience and asking Copilot to help me rethink this content for a different target audience. Maybe we're identifying a new vertical, or this is the first proposal to this particular industry, and we want to adapt our content so that it aligns more our examples and or other elements more closely align with that industry, right? We can give a piece of content to Copilot and give it a prompt that says, help me reimagine this content for this new audience. Summarizing, this idea of meeting the character count. If you deal with Excel-based RFPs, you have my condolences. First of all, I think that's a universal grumble that comes out of everyone when I mentioned Excel-based RFPs. But if you use Excel-based, if you have to deal with Excel-based RFPs, frequently they'll give us a character count. Here's the answer, it can't exceed more than 2,000 characters. Well, great, my piece of content I would typically use has 3,000 characters. How do I get from 3,000 characters to 2,000? How do I condense this down? Copilot is a phenomenal tool for that. Again, I've got to proofread it. I could say that against all of these. Unifying the voices, you've got to proofread that after that's been unified, etc. But it's a very helpful tool for that process. Identifying RFP requirements, processing and analyzing RFPs as a topic. And I'll show a few examples of those here now in a moment. Likewise, some grading. You can ask it to do analysis. Copilot's an amazing analysis tool that says, hey, help me look at what I've written and compare that to a requirement. And how did I do? Grade me. Tell me if there's gaps. These are excellent uses for AI. And by the way, across the board, all of the outputs of these things then become a very natural handoff back to expedience to build out that content library as you go. So I want to show you all of this right now, and hopefully this all makes sense, and I don't confuse myself or anyone else along the way as we get into the nuts and bolts. And for my current customers that are on this call, this is going to be a lot of review. This 2 seconds will be review to you, but just to kind of set the stage for everyone else, expedience lives as a set of ribbons inside of Word. When I mentioned the idea of building out that trusted library of content, of that vetted and approved and scrubbed fixed information, that's what we call our portfolio, this content library. It's presented in these little drop-down menus, these galleries of categorized information, like this about us thing. That's the thing that we've written and scrubbed and approved, and that's the overview of the about us or our XYZ approach and values and methodology and whatever it might be, etc. All of these reusable elements that I don't want to see change. I don't want Edmund's resume to to be reinvented by Copilot each time it's used. I want this to be locked down, vetted, approved descriptions of our legal terms or our processes and what have you. Things that we've had some need some degree of consistency and accuracy. Those are important to be locked down in the content library. So that's the idea of a content library that lives inside of Word. Now, how that could be used is this. Let me show you two examples. Here's a really quick kind of questionnaire type example. Oops, grabbed the wrong thing, didn't I? Apologies there. I want to show you this thing right here. Here's a quick questionnaire type example where I've got a customer that's asking me this question that says, describe your company's history and vision and culture. I could highlight that phrase and click the search button. And what that just did is it searched that content library of all of those assets that we have to find out what's the most helpful things that we could consider, which I could preview and look at before dropping directly in to this document. That's the idea of it. And by the way, that record, again, scrubbed. You'll see this is where it's expecting me to use a client's name. It doesn't have some other customer's name that I'm hoping gets replaced, or I'm not hoping that someone uses the Control F and the find and replace and fixing it, that the content library can be threaded in a way that these personalization spots can be nicely incorporated into the records and ensuring that we can build, again, static, great content, but also stuff that can be nicely personalized. So let me give you another example. I want to close this other document. I'll have 15 Word documents open soon enough. I want to show you a different example of the use of expedience, and then I'm going to change the topics altogether and talk about now how is AI changing or adding to all of this, not changing necessarily, but adding to. This is an example. We call this approach an automated word proposal or a PDQ. And the PDQs are documents that are threaded and expecting me to say, hey, I'm building a proposal for product line A and product line B and service area C, whatever it might be. Right. You'll notice as I'm making these selections, this template's getting things for me. I might say, great, include technology, and it's going to bring in this integration and that testing component of integration. So these PDQs can have guidance built into them. Like in this case, it says, Jason, you can choose this pricing model or that pricing model, right? But if I choose one, it unchooses the other, right? So it's very wizard-like, but the idea would be that we can streamline the creation of a template-driven proposal. What this is doing now is it's pulling in all of those records from that content library. And again, I like showing this example because I'm about to talk about AI, and AI looks a lot like that, where it goes and then everything pops up on the document. And you go, "Wow, that's awesome!" But in the AI world that I'm about to click over to here in a second and show you, in that world again, it's not to overemphasize. It's not trustworthy as it sits. It needs to be vetted, approved. In this world, all of those records it pulled from were from that content library of the trusted stuff that didn't have another customer's name and didn't have something that was too specific or out of date or inaccurate in another way by combining two things together in a way that's inaccurate. You'll notice that again, this particular proposal template or this particular example brought together my headers and my footers and my table of contents and all of those things with those, again, gold standard items. I think I've said it 9 times. I can move on. You get it, trustworthy stuff, because you've already signed off on it. You've already had it vetted and approved and fixed and rooted in accuracy. So where does and how do things shift, and where does the Copilot come in? You'll notice that Copilot sits within a number of places inside of Microsoft, right? So down here in Windows itself, there's Copilot. If you go into office.com or into the browser, to the Edge browser, you'll see Copilot exists out online as well, and you can do cool search stuff. And when you're using Copilot online, you can search internal for just your organization because again, it sits in your firewall, so it can look through your emails. It can look through your CRM if you've got a CRM that has. If you've got either Salesforce that has exposure to Dynamics, Salesforce that has exposure to Copilot and/or Dynamics, that was my Freudian slip there, that where the content is searchable, is accessible to Copilot. It pulls from all of those sources as well. I want to talk about Copilot for Word, though, because we live in Word, and the advantages for our customers are frequently that Copilot sits right here. So here's a couple of examples that I was prepared to share. To make it go faster, I mentioned that I'm going to show you our prompt library tool because I want to prompt Copilot to help me do some things. And instead of making you watch me type these, sometimes long prompts, I want to introduce you to another tool of ours called our prompt library. What this does is it allows you to centralize your best prompts and organize them in a way that makes sense to you, to your team, to your workflow, or to your processes, in a way that you can quickly and consistently reuse those prompts to drive Copilot or drive any of the AI tools platforms for that matter, but specifically meant for Copilot. So here's an RFP that BigCo issued and sent to me. And the RFP has all kinds of stuff. And of course, like they always do, right? Instructions and requirements and information. And I need to do a number of things. I want to show you how I've written some prompts to ask Copilot to help me analyze this RFP. I might start by just building out a prompt that says, hey, should we even bid for this work? Let's talk about that idea first. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna drop in first the idea of this. I'm gonna pull in a prompt that I've written to give context to Copilot. And it's going to, in this case, this prompt is going to give all of the company history that I've written and we have right now in our content library, a pre-write of our company history. I pulled that from the prompt library and I've just pasted it in to Copilot. So for those of you that are less familiar with Copilot, this is Copilot over here on the right-hand side of my screen, and there's the RFP over to the left. But you'll see what it says. It says, hey, we're this kind of a company. We do these kinds of things. These are our strengths and our weaknesses and what we do. And do you get it? I ask at the end of this prompt. It says, hey, just tell me you understand at the end. So I know okay, great. Oh, Copilot says it understands about our business. The prompt library, I've got another prompt that I've pre-written to say, these are why we win business, what makes us different and what's important for you to know about our business, et cetera. These are key differentiators about us. And let me explain that to you. And please, again, tell me you get it. And I don't need you to read all this and understand all this, but just understand the idea would be, that, hey, these are key differentiators for us around how we win and why we prioritize what's important to us when we're considering a new RFP, responding and investing all of the effort and time and deciding whether we're going to bid for this work. It might be helpful for us to have some assessment done, right? To say bid, no bid. And that's what I'm now going to ask it to do. I'm going to say, great, Copilot, help me do some analysis, some bid, no bid analysis. So this is a prompt that I've written in again, and I've dropped into my my prompt library. It says, great, now your task is to tell me, what do you think we should do? Should we bid for this work, yes or no? And I say, go. You'll see it's going to go analyze this whole document. So it's not looking at the web. It's not looking at other things in my email. I'm inside of Copilot within Word, directly inside of this opportunity, right? And so now here's Copilot going to work for me. It says, hey, I see they're a great fit for you. And it's giving me links to within the document where it found this, why it thinks there's some parallels here between those things that I taught it up there to tell about, hey, this is our approach and why we win business, our differentiators, et cetera. And here's some reasons you may want to have concerns around not bidding for this work. By the way, here's my recommendation. I think that if you've got the bandwidth, then this might make sense. So that is not trustworthy. It is helpful though, right? It gives us a place to start. It gives us a set of framework and thinking that we can then scrutinize and analyze. It's no longer just a blank document, so to speak, with an RFP and say, Jason, go to work and figure it all out on your own. We can establish some prompts that can give some consistent guidance. I'm doing this, my colleagues are doing this, et cetera. All of us have at least the same initial framework. We can use Copilot to help do some analysis for us of this incoming RFP in a very helpful way, very effective way. Another one I'll just show you as I'm here. I wasn't planning on showing you this idea, but I have this other one. I have instructions and win themes. This is a really common example that I like to share, which is so great. I've decided we're going to bid for it. And maybe I put this on a report and I've summarized this for my leadership team and justified our expense and the effort of chasing this business already. That's done. But now as I'm about to engage some subject experts to ask them to help me build out our responses or build out our sections or fill in some of the blanks, the details. But before I just share this whole RFP with them, I've written this prompt that says this is sort of my get this RFP ready to share with SME prompt. And I'm happy, by the way, if anyone would like, just shoot me an email, whatever. I'm happy to share with you all of these prompts, give you the actual text if there's any value to you, at least to see how I went out approaching these. But in this case, I prompted it to say, summarize this darn thing for us, right? Give us information that's more bite-sized that that my subject expert would be able to consume and read. And don't, if I share the whole RFP, maybe I don't want them wasting their time across the whole thing, or maybe I recognize they won't dig into all of the details. So summarize the RFP, give a summary of the customer's outcomes that they're desiring, give any concerns if they mention concerns or gaps or risks. Let's make sure that we identify those in the summary. Also create win themes. Right. So think about those things I taught you a moment ago, Copilot. Copilot remembers all of those chats or those messages prior to this prompt. And remember, I told it, hey, this is how we win business and what's important to us. Right. And so I'm asking it, help write some win themes, things that we need to really emphasize on in our response, and so that we can demonstrate our awesomeness, etc. Right. Go. I'll just, you get it. You don't need to hear me ramble through it anymore, but there's some elements to this as well. But help us, again, just create a summary that I can share with the subject expert, and give them the nuts and bolts of this RFP in a way that they can be more helpful to this pursuit, right? And what it does is, I'll just say, as someone who has used this now a bunch of times in different ways, it's very helpful. This is one of the absolute strengths of many of the AI tools, but ChatGPT especially, which is what's being used here, of analyzing, summarizing, condensing, and the other way around, right? Taking a few bullets and help me build them out. It's good at that as well. But that's another example of an awesome use of Copilot. So again, I could use this output to then drive my process. And I have different examples of how our tools can pick up from Copilot and what we can do with this as well. But I'm not trying to turn all of this into just a sales pitch for expedience. I want to show you how look, this is Copilot being Copilot, and how you could write great prompts in a way that you can really guide it to be of help to you in your process. My notes, I have one other example I wanted to share. So all of these examples so far have been sort of analysis and summary, some summaries as well, and guidance, etc. But it's sort of kind of global across this document. Help me think about this document. I want to show you an example. I think I have it up, and if I don't, I'll just, here it is. Great. So here's a piece of content from, now that RFP, one of the things they asked us to include in our response was the roadmap of our engineering. This all make-believe scenario. I just created a piece of ugly content, and I want to give you a scenario in which that ugly content might be in your hands. Here's a piece of content that an engineer handed me around our roadmap for engineering. And while it's well written, I'm certain it's accurate. They're the expert here in this topic. I just, as the salesperson and as the proposal writer who's involved with now handing this to my customer, I see this is riddled with things that my customer may or may not understand what UX and ML and CI/CD and blah, blah, blah mean. I need to probably translate this in a way that's more helpful to my customer and for my proposal. Another example could be, again, I've got a piece of content that was created by two different content creators, two different contributors, and I want to now define a universal voice and apply that definition using Copilot to both of those contributions in a way that they become standardized. That could be another idea. That's not this idea. This idea I'm sharing with you is, I've got this chunk of content right here. I'm not going to launch Copilot off the side now. Within the Word document, I can say, I want to use Copilot. And you'll notice that Copilot's saying, hey, what do you want to do? Just automatically rewrite or make it shorter or make some other suggestions? In this case, I want to tell it, what I want you to do is help me with this, what I call my SME rewrite. I just wrote this example to say, and here you'll see me drop the prompt in up here. It says, hey, rewrite this technical content to make it more universally understandable, make it persuasive, make it professional, remove technical jargon, define acronyms, help me make something that people will get when they read it in my proposal. And now right here from within the document, a different use of Copilot. I'm no longer kind of, in the other examples, I was showing you sort of in a parallel kind of universe. I was on the side panel using Copilot, but now I'm asking Copilot to interact with my document directly, write content for me, right? And here's what it came back with. It says, hey, we're going to make it easier for them. And it's saying, hey, do you want to keep this alongside the document, which is what I typically do. It gives me another option here, replace it, get rid of the old and drop in the new. I prefer to say keeping it. Why? Because it still gives me the opportunity to do some of that proofing I've been talking again and again about making sure it didn't make it cute and summarized, but do so in an inaccurate way. Good night. I speak too fast even for myself. Apologies. So it says, hey, we're going to make it easier for the users. That's what the whole UI UX thing up there is talking about. We want to make it organized in a way and blah, 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 right? So this was the rewrite. It defined AI for us here. I guess that was one of those bullets and machine learning and what have you back up here, and helped us again create some content that might be more aligned. I may very well need to take this and send it back to that subject expert and need their sign off on the changes, right? That might very well be my workflow, because while I've read this to be appropriate linguistically for my proposal, it may have some inaccuracies that go over my head because, again, this came from engineering. I likely would want to have that feedback loop and that sign off for that agency I was describing earlier as incorporated into my workflow here to this content. So those are the examples I wanted to share. And now there's 100 other ones. If I go back to this slide, I head back over here around all of the different ways that Copilot can be used, either within the Word document itself to reiterate a piece of content or alongside of the Word document. I'll say the biggest example, but maybe isn't not the easiest example for me to show. I could certainly, we could queue up something individually if you'd like to see this, but Copilot's also great at not just summarizing across a document, but summarizing across documents. So another great use case is taking this idea of your old proposals. So this idea way back here, this idea of stacking up your old proposals in a way that you can direct Copilot to say, hey, don't go to everything. Just go to this section of proposals. Maybe my most recent 3 months or 6 months only of proposals. You can create a folder in SharePoint and say, Copilot, I want to create an agent that just looks at that folder. And so it's great at also summarizing, not just across the document, but across lots of documents to go find things and again, source things for the sake of analysis. Right. So those are the examples I wanted to share. And again, the last one's more just kind of alluding to an idea, but certainly happy to spend more time. I feared, first of all, timing. I'm already at 40 minutes in, and second of all, just opportunity for confusion gets wider and wider as I keep digging into these topics. But those are the core of the examples I wanted to share. But I do have time. If we have any questions that we shared, AJ, were there questions that came up that you'd like me to touch on now, or were you able to nicely do so throughout the discussion?
Yes, I was nicely able to do so.
Oh, great. Wonderful. So I guess the one thing that kind of the last point that I would share on this idea, a common question that I do get is sort of like going back to this idea back here, where there's sort of these two sources of knowledge, if you will, in old proposals and in the curated content library. And the one thing I do like to share is that, oh, by the way, this concept of using Copilot to pull from old proposals, where that little icon looks like in this little flow chart here, you certainly could replace these old proposals with the content library of expedients as well. You can augment, you can add to. So another source, you can say, hey, Copilot, go look in the old proposals folder, or you can say, hey, Copilot, go look in the expedients, the stuff that you've gone through that process of vetting and approving, right? That quality content that's been curated and sanitized, that can be used as the source of Copilot knowledge as well. So these become wildly synergistic and supportive of each other. So I hope this is helpful. Lots to cover in just a 40-minute span, but that's what I wanted to touch on here. Happy to dig in deeper. That's my contact details on the screen now, jason@exp soft.com. And AJ's online right now. And many of you, I think, have spoken with AJ as well. Feel free to reach out to either of us or anyone else in the team that you may know already. Please feel free to reach out and chat if we can be of any help at all on this topic. But I hope, again, this was helpful. Thank you so much.